It did take me a little long to get the video up. I don't know if any of y'all noticed the video up for Monday's class. I didn't get up until, good Lord, last night at like 10, midnight, something like that. Was because I started the render Monday night, but then Tuesday was busier than I anticipated it being. My wife's like, I got a doctor's appointment. You want to come and help with the baby while I go to the doctor's appointment? I was like, yeah, sure. It's just one of those like yearly checkup things. I was like, that's easy. I forgot that my wife, whenever she goes to the doctor, wants to turn the doctor trip into like, let's go shop at every place in Rockwall because we're already there. And so we went to every place in Rockwall. And I got mine in too because for all of the stores we had to go to, I wanted like some sort of retribution. So I got half-price books. Huh? What if?
Well, maybe at half off on all jeans.
I don't wear jeans. I'm literally wearing them right now. Does anybody know the brand of jeans? Anybody know the brand of jeans I'm wearing?
I don't.
They're the best fitting jeans.
Wrangler.
They're Wrangler.
Okay, I'm gonna guess Wrangler.
I knew he was a Wrangler.
And they're I've worn lots of jeans over my years. I've worn Levi. I've worn Faded Glory, the stupid one. What's the other ones? The Arizona jeans from JC. I've worn lots of jeans, but I was always resistant to Wranglers. And I think because I'd always seen like the simple boot cut, but these ones that I have, they're like the loose fit. Wrangler knows how to find different sizes of people and accommodate them.
Do you wear boot cut?
I don't know. I wear boots. Maybe they are boot cut. I know they're not skinny cowboy cut. I can never pull that off. We went to the stores and ended up taking like the whole day, and then I had promised to make dinner, which I made dinner, which was Mexican tacos, which are fantastic. And that I was done with at 9 p.m. So once it was time, I said, wow, I'm pretty tired after today. And then I went into the chair to grade and woke up at 2 a.m. So when I got here, I did the discussion post so I could kind of be caught up to speed on what y'all thought about Auden and Thomas and Larkin. And didn't have time to get to any of the other grading that had come through on Monday evening, which is unfortunate. So I'll be doing some of that. I'm going to try to get everything that I see on there done today. I'm going to do always the plannings first. Then I'll do whatever research essays are on there. After that, I'm going to do critical evaluation census analysis essays that are on there. And any straggling discussion posts. I've noticed that now that I've opened a couple of other discussion posts, I'm only opening the ones people have explicitly asked me to open, the discussion posts. So if somebody says, hey, I need this open, then I'll open it. But only if I've been asked. So if you had one you hadn't done, you'll need to let me know and why. And it's got to be pretty decent. Otherwise, I won't open. So I'll be grading those probably very last. Let's see. So today we have 3 poems by Auden, a poem by Thomas, and 2 by Larkin. Next class we have next week is the research presentations. And then we have exam day. So we're almost there. We got 2 more class days after this one. Remember your research. It'd be good to have your research essays in. It'd be great if you had it all. If you didn't already have one in, have it in by the night. The reason is I don't push super hard to grade on like Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, but I always grade on Sundays. So if you want to have a grade back on your research essay before you do a presentation over it, the best time to get that in would be today, if you're done already. Let's see, because I'll be grading those tonight. Then we'll have the final exam review, and then that's presentations, and we have final exam. It's quick. Discussion posts 9 and 10 I think will be unlocked after class today. So it's the one like what's the most useful, least useful. And by the way, did I mention last semester I don't want people talking about what the most useful literary work was in terms of your papers? Like I don't want you to say, well, this is really useful to me because I wrote a paper over it. I want you to say like, oh, it's useful because of like whatever idea was in it or something that connects with you. You know, find a way to make it important beyond just because I was able to write a paper about it or because I could understand it. Those are kind of lame. Let's see. Any questions before I move on to talk about the poems? No? Do I remember how to do a presentation, right?
Now we need to watch the Channing Tatum video.
I'll add it to the video, so you can watch it later if you like. Did I tell you that? Well, I think one time I had that pulled from YouTube because it had the 2-second clip of Channing Tatum in it, and they were like, "Oh, copyright infringement." It's like, what? I'm not trying to like show people the entire movie. Like nobody's gonna go, well, I was gonna go watch 21 Jump Street today, but because there were 2-3-second clips in Nichols' video, I guess I don't have to, because I got the whole experience.
Well, because what if you're hiding it and you tell people make a playlist where it starts right then and then you play a whole movie?
Only you would do that.
That'd be weird. Like, does that happen
You
before?
would have to make
Paid usage.
like 100,000 videos of 2 seconds.
Oh, that would be a nightmare. I don't think anybody, hopefully nobody would do that. All right, so let's start with, if nobody has any questions. As I walked out one evening, I will caution everybody once again, Kate's not here.
I got
So discussion, let me know discussion
Okay,
question.
read it. I got it.
It's like, I'm talking about serious responses here.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
I'm not talking about just
Oh, God.
quip after quip after quip.
We're screwed.
Here we go. Let's see. As I walked out one evening, and it says it's a title from Auden's later connections. I don't think it actually had a title earlier. As you know, it's just the first line, so it doesn't necessarily need a title. A lot of you said that this was fairly easy to understand, but a lot of people did just mostly talk about love, and that's not necessarily the subject of this. I mean, it's there, but something much sadder is also going on. So I think the first part of the poem, it almost works like a sonnet, even though it's not a sonnet where, you know, there's like the beginning, then the turn, and then it's something else. And usually there's like some sort of solution, but I don't even think this one has a solution. It just sort of ends depressingly. As I walked out one evening, walking down Bristol Street, the crowds upon the pavement were fields of harvest wheat. And down by the brimming river, I heard a lover sing under an arch of the railway, "Love has no ending." I don't know if he actually sings it. It sounds nice so far, right? I'll love you, dear. I'll love you till China and Africa meet. That's a long ways away. Probably never will happen. And the river jumps over the mountain, and the salmon sing in the street. Oh, that sounds delightful. It also sounds very surreal, right? He's like, "I'll love you until the river jumps over the mountain." Well, that's never going to happen. But you can imagine a river jumping over a mountain. It's a fun thing to think about. You can imagine a salmon singing in the street. What does salmon sound like? I don't know. Much probably like I sound when I'm fake singing. "I'll love you till the ocean is folded and hung up to dry." Psh, such an exaggeration. So silly. Hyperbole. "And the 7 stars go squawking like geese about the sky." So we've got like 7 stars in the constellation Pleiades. The ancients thought they were 7 sisters, so they're very, very well known. They're stars in the sky, and he's saying once they start like dancing around and making geese sounds, it's not gonna happen. So we're just over and over and over again being inundated with, yeah, that's not gonna happen. "The years shall run like rabbits, for in my arms I hold the flower of the ages and the first love of the world." And he says he holds the first love of the world. So it's just like a lover. 2 people who love each other, like new love. Like, we were the only ones who ever loved anybody. Right? I feel this happens a lot with, you've got to know some high school students that you go to high school with who are like this. It's like, everybody else is like, whatever, but our love is like true. Although I don't know if that's necessarily... Now, tell me, like, with the young millennials or post-millennials, I'm not sure exactly what you're called right now, or if I don't know, maybe my kid,
Kate's not
your age group.
So we don't know.
Because I assume Scott and Lindsay fall closer to mine. I don't know, you might fall closer. I don't know, it depends on what you think. But do you feel like this kind of attitude toward love, our love is so important, and like, kids would yell at their moms they could stay with their stupid boyfriend? Like, do you feel like that's still a thing that happens, or do you feel like
Yeah.
No, it's
kids
We're getting there.
kids are getting more mature about things like that, and they aren't really.
No.
I think it's because I've read that people your age and like the younger ones, they're not having children and getting married as quickly as previous generations.
I think it's both. Like some people are very like,
A
oh yeah.
couple kids are pregnant in middle school.
Well, I mean that's always going to happen, but I mean, well, I mean you wouldn't exactly know this. I was wondering if like maybe there's less that are getting pregnant in middle school than. But I mean, middle school. I mean, nobody's even got the faculties to really, I don't think, understand what they're doing. I mean, honestly. Once you get to high school, I'd say right around like 15, 16, you kind of start to understand that one day you'll grow old and die. I think literally like at middle school, you still think you're invincible forever. And like the weight of future decisions doesn't fully bear on you.
High schoolers still think they're invincible.
Yes, I felt invincible until like last year. Now my knees hurt. And I'm like, is this going to keep going? Like, is this going to last forever? Like these knees? Like, shouldn't they not hurt at 34? It can only get worse. But I wonder, like, to what degree kids still think, like the sun rising poem of John Donne, like, we are the whole world. Everything is us.
I am nothing. I am nothing.
Nothing exists outside of our love. Do people still have that romantic of an ideal, or?
It happens.
We all hate each other and ourselves.
I was listening to a podcast a couple of months ago, and a guy was talking, or maybe it was a girl was talking about, I don't know why I'm saying guy or girl, it was whoever it was that had a PhD. But they were talking about how the culture now in college is almost like people aren't supposed to have, in some degrees, people aren't supposed to have like emotional attachments because they all agree like they're not ready for that. But I don't know if I'm misinterpreting what I might be actually misremembering what I heard on the podcast. But it just sounded to me like there wasn't that sense of disenchantment with the newer generations. Like, yes, our love is the only love. It's, well, this love is good right now and it's good for me and I think that it could work, but I'm not going to become too attached to the idea. But I don't know if that's common for everybody, if that's just one or two people. I don't know. But it's still probably a thing that does go on at least somewhere.
Yes.
That romantic idea of love, that the love is exactly what I want it to be, and it's everything. And I mean the classic sense of romantic ideal, not like romance, not like that. I mean like, the world is as you want it to be, and it's beautiful, and you can shape it to what you want. And then we have the sad part of the poem starts beginning, and it's not as depressing as Wasteland, but it definitely is depressing. It just kind of makes you sadder and sadder as the poem goes on. But all the clocks in the city began to whir and chime. Oh, let not time deceive you. You cannot conquer time. And I think mostly the guy before would be like, not really understanding that time is a thing that's going to bear down on you. In the burrows of the nightmare where justice naked is. And he's moving the words around. He doesn't say justice is naked. He says justice naked is. That movement in syntax makes it sound more uncomfortable. The pauses you have to make to say that. Time watches from the shadow and coughs when you would kiss. Can you imagine like every time you kiss? What? And then you look and you're like, what was that, dude? And he's like, I'm sorry, I can't help myself. Like jerk. Time is a jerk. In headaches and in worry, vaguely life leaks away. Just the idea of life leaking away makes it sound like, I don't know, some thin and gross liquid.
So I don't like the word leaking.
I know, just leaking itself is a gross word. And just the idea of life itself leaking away makes it sound even, like it almost sounds like you got like a toilet that's leaking. And like your life is crappy toilet water and it's leaking.
Like the idea of something leaking out of
right. Especially like life itself. And time will have his fancy tomorrow or today. But he talks very lightly about this. Time will have his fancy. Like, it's almost as though he's being mocking of the whole idea. Into many a green valley drifts the appalling snow. And it says here, literally making white. I think it's also has the other meaning of appalling. That which makes white, but also just the sound of the word appalling and how we don't like it appalling is an almost depressing word. It's like, I find, we use it with things like, oh, you wouldn't believe there's this girl in middle school who got pregnant. It's appalling. Like that's not a good thing. Like something that would like appalling, meaning like it would make your skin turn white from lack of blood, or like you would lose the pallor of blood in your skin. Time breaks the threaded dances in the diver's brilliant bow. I actually think this is like really, I don't know if he means this, but he says time breaks the diver's brilliant bow. Like I think of a diver diving. You ever seen like a diver dive before, like at like the Olympics or something? They like do like all that fancy like movements and they land in the water perfectly or whatever. I don't know that I'm supposed to imagine this, but I imagine actually the diver, he's like diving and his back bends backwards and he like and his like head, like heels meet the back of his head because he's like something like out of a horror movie. I know he just means that the people aren't young forever. That's what he's talking about. Like, the diver is going to lose the ability to dive in the way that he did when he was young. Michael Phelps won't swim like a fish forever. Like, he'll probably swim pretty well, but he can't win Olympics into his like 80s.
Faster than sharks.
That must still be game now.
I think
I thought
that was a myth, and he didn't actually race a shark.
Computer-generated shark.
No.
It was really sad.
Let's see, and then he says, and this has always creeped me out. Oh, plunge your hands in water, plunge them up to the wrist. Stare in the basin and wonder what you've missed. Now he's writing this, I think, when I think there was running water at this time, but, I mean, regardless, he's talking about like a water basin. Have y'all seen those before? Like my mom bought one at a garage sale. But it usually had like a mirror here. Then like there was a bowl here that was set into like a table, and then there would be like a pitcher that goes with it. So you'd fill the water in the pitcher, you bring it and pour it into the basin, and you wash your hands in it and kind of clean up. Another famous water basin that was in history. May think of one. The idea of somebody washing their hands in something. They put their hands into a water basin and pulled it out and then made a comment about it.
No.
Yeah,
A guy named Pilate. You know who Pilate is?
I don't know.
He's in a book called the Bible.
Oh.
They were like, so do you want me to give you back? Do y'all want to like pardon the murderer here? Or Jesus, this guy who just said a bunch of things? They're like, give us the murderer back, kill the Jesus guy. He's like, seriously? He's like, no, I'm washing my hands of this. Because that's, I guess, a universal like symbol for you wash your hands of this, saying like, I take no responsibility. This is not me. This is you guys. So I don't know if he's going for that really dark image there of like kind of this touching off point of the moment that Jesus was crucified. But plunge your hands in the water, plunge them up to the wrist, stare in the basin and wonder what you've missed. You're like, okay, let me wash my hands. And it's like, oh my gosh, what have I missed? Like, what in life have I not yet done? And like just staring at your hands and seeing what they have and haven't done. And like, I guess they're getting old and wrinkly. The glacier knocks in the cupboard, the desert sighs in the bed, and the crack in the teacup opens a lane to the land of the dead. I actually think this line is meant to, this sounds a lot like The Wasteland to me, where I don't think there's necessarily any logic here, like where we can figure out what's going on. Like the glacier knocks in the cupboard. Like, what does this symbolize? I don't think it symbolizes anything, really. It's just we think of a glacier, think of something slowly coming to bear very hard on the inside of your cupboard. You're like, what is that? It's almost like Jumanji. Remember when like the plant, you ever seen that Jumanji movie?
Yeah.
Like when the plant thing starts growing everywhere and it just starts taking over everything and like it's coming out of like the cabinets and stuff. Like the idea of a glacier coming out your cupboard slowly. Oh my word, have y'all seen a movie called It Follows?
Yes, where it's the STD, and then the monster follows you around, and then they finally end up like just dealing with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a ghost STD. Like you transfer it to people through sex, and then what happens is a ghost / haunted thing that can take any human shape, whether it be people you've loved, people you've never seen before, naked people, old women in muumuus. It follows you at a walking pace. Like this is how it just chases you like this.
What happens when
And no matter where you go, it always walks after you.
What happens when
And it'll eventually find you. So if you like drive across the United States, you know, you got a Google map how long it takes. They don't do this in the movie. I immediately, when I was watching the movie, was like, how long does it take to walk across the United States? 20 days at 24 hours a day. Perfect.
Wow.
So I just like make a few friends like over on the other side of the coast, and then you just constantly go back and forth. It's the only way you could. You'd have to get a job where you're constantly traveling to and from New York, and then every time it shows up, you're like, okay, time to go. And you just go back and forth and back and forth. But that idea of something coming for you slowly, it's just terrifying.
It's such a creepy movie. It's so good.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what the glacier here in the cupboard's meant to be. It's just imagine like you fall asleep and the glacier just slowly comes to cover you and you die. Like that's I think kind of the image we're going for. The desert size in the bed. Now that I kind of think is talking about the infertility of sex in our times, but I don't know if that's necessarily the other one. I mean, yes.
Back to your thing about the whole movie.
Yeah.
What happens when it touches you?
What now?
When the thing touches you?
It kills you. The movie starts with you see a girl like just basically goes and sits on the beach and resigns herself to what's about to happen. And like they find her in the morning and like she's been bent backwards in half, much like I talked about happening with the diver. So she loses the fight with the thing.
But yeah, it'll like stand in the street or whatever, and then like you'll see it, and then you'll be like, oh no, and then you'll crash your car. That's how it works.
Yeah,
There you
it's
go.
freaky. Let's see. Then we have the crack in the teacup opens a lane to the land of the dead. I don't even know if that's necessarily meant to be anything. It's like you're staring at the teacup, you see the crack, and then kind of like that crack just in your mind turns into like the gates of hell. You know, it's just creepy. Where the beggars raffle the banknotes. That actually reminds me of The Dark Knight Rises, if I've seen that. Where like they basically take the city back from the rich, and like the poor people are like basically taking all the money, and the money doesn't do anything anymore. So they're just like throwing money. And the giant is enchanting to Jack. Like Jack, instead of like trying to outwit the giant, he's like, "Hey giant, what's up? You look like a nice guy," and then the giant eats him. Kind of like the subversion of all of our narratives these days. We love what? Underdogs, hero narratives. You know, imagine the hero just straight up goes and gets eaten. Like Jack and the Beanstalk, yay! He goes up there, there's a giant, yay! Get the giant. Now he seems to like the giant. He's going toward the giant. Oh, the giant ate him.
Oh man.
So he's hitting a lot of like big images here. The lily white boy is a roarer. It says down here there's something about the lily white boy becomes a boisterous reveler. I assume like somebody who's presumably pure, like it says, becomes a boisterous reveler. So I guess you could think of this almost like the prim and proper like preacher's daughter type. You know, ends up becoming like horrible like druggie or something. Like complete subversion of what we would expect. And Jill goes down on her back, and I think it says down here, I think, right? Yeah, it's saying like Jack and Jill, the ones who go up and fetch a pail of water, like a simple little children's thing. Jack like seduces Jill on top of the hill, and the water thing doesn't happen. It's just like sex. So like all these things that we think of as like innocent and pure, in that particular stanza, everything's being subverted and flipped. And this is kind of like the Wasteland a little bit, but we're able to see the comparisons a lot better than if there were rock, no rock. If there were dry dirt, no rock. It's just the constant, like, what am I looking at? Oh, look in the mirror. Oh, look in your distress. Life remains a blessing, although you cannot bless. I think last time, somebody actually explained to me what this meant, but this has always been the hardest one for me. Life remains a blessing, although you cannot bless. Oh, look in the mirror, look at your distress. Life remains a blessing, although you cannot bless. I don't know, that's always confused me. Like, it's a blessing to have life, I agree, but we cannot bless. No, we can. We're not gods. But I don't understand why that's bad. Are we supposed to be gods? I've always just been confused by that line. And I've not found anybody that ever finds it as confusing or that ever tries to explain it. Oh, stand at the window as the tears scald and start. You shall love your crooked neighbor with your crooked heart. That tells to me all manner of, not neighbors, like other people. Neighbor is not meant to be literally the person who lives next to you, but like everybody who's like part of humanity that we see on a daily basis. And we have crooked hearts, and they have crooked hearts. I was thinking the other day about something crazy. Granted, you've never had this happen before, but I'm sure you've seen it in movies and stuff. Like, I was thinking about how alcohol is evil, and I was thinking about how, like, people drink alcohol, and they will generally do terrible things. Like, what was that? There's that country song where the guy's like, maybe it's not even a country song. No, it's not. Oh, it's kind of a country song, but it's like too poppy to really be true country. I think it's the Nah Honey I'm Good.
Oh, Andy Graham.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
He's like, I could drink another, but I probably shouldn't. I've got somebody at home. Which really annoys me. People repeat words because they don't know. They don't have enough. Well, he's repeating words, but for a better reason. It's like, oh, I need more words to fill space. So home. But in that particular song, he's like, I want to drink another drink, but I probably shouldn't because I have somebody at home. So he's afraid if he drinks more drink, then he'll have sex with her, right? So like as human, like people, one of our things that separates us, I guess, from animals is that we can essentially, anytime we want to, we have willpower to choose not to do something. We don't always follow our impulses. So that's something that's incredibly human, is to restrict ourselves and to inhibit ourselves. But alcohol makes you not inhibit yourself. Like alcohol, like the more you drink, you go, I'll just do whatever my body feels like doing. And the body wants sex and food and all those sorts of things that just in like constant array. You just turn to your animal nature. However, I was thinking of something else, is that alcohol often will make people overly honest, which you consider honesty to be a virtue, right? And I was thinking, well, actually being sober is crazy because you inhibit yourself from doing bad things, so the actions you don't do. But it's weird because a lot of people constantly lie and don't realize it. If being drunk makes people honest, I've never seen a person who they got so drunk and they were honest, everybody's like, well, that's exactly how he is normally. Like it's usually there's something somebody's keeping to themselves that they let out when they get drunk that pisses people off. It's just one of those things. So it's like sober people are liars who don't do bad things, and drunk people are honest people who do bad things. It's very weird. Like that if you think about it, all of us, whether we're drinking or not drinking, no matter what, we're all in some way crooked. Whether we're doing the right thing or we're lying about our honest truth all the time. I've never met anybody who's just purely honest all the time. People lie, they don't realize it. Like if I even sometimes when I say to students, I'm like, does that make sense? Oh yeah. Like even that little, nobody realizes it. Like, yeah, so I'm like, no. like I'll just say yeah because it won't hurt his feelings, or because I don't want to disrupt anybody. Okay, so you're lying to disrupt people. No, it's not lying. It's just saying let's move on. Yeah, but you're saying yeah. But nobody realizes exactly how many. You probably lie like 50 times a day and you don't realize it. Isn't that fun? Because we're all crooked neighbors with crooked hearts. And then he's done. He says, it was late in the evening. The lovers, they were gone. The clocks had ceased their chiming and the deep river ran on. So time keeps going. This is a little bit of Mont Blanc in here too. The Shelley, time is going to keep going and the world is going to keep going. The river's going to run on. The clocks cease their chiming, but even if we're not paying attention to the time, it keeps going with the river. River keeps running. And the lovers, of course, they're gone. Like, I'll love you forever. I'll stand right here for the rest of my life to tell you how much I love you. And he's gone. So that's not what love does. Love lasts as long as it lasts. Put that on a Valentine's card.
It's gonna last.
Love lasts as long as it lasts. Enjoy it while it's here. Happy Valentine's Day. That'd be terrible. What now?
How to stay in a relationship. relationship.
How to stay in a relationship
It
101.
only lasts so long. Don't worry.
Does anybody understand when people say like how to do blah 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 101 what the 101 means?
I don't.
One on one?
You ever heard it was like, oh, that's relationships 101. You ever heard that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't.
Do you know what it means?
No.
Our class is called English 2322 and 2323. In the spring, you had 1302, and in the fall, you had 1301. 1301 is, they've come up with new designations in Texas for classes and in different states as well, where I believe the 1 at the front generally means first year class. The number after that means how many hours of credit you get, which is 3, so 1-3. And then 01, which number in the sequence of that year it is. So 1301 is the first class that is a 3-hour class in the first year sequence of English courses. So now you're in technically what we consider to be the second year of English courses, the third, and for some reason the 22. I don't know why they've gone up to 22 and not, I guess because there are other 2301s, there's other English separations that go at the state level. Like universities might have like a linguistics class or something as a 2301 or something, but or technical writing. But back in the day, the first class you took in any course was like Algebra 101, English 101. That was the number for the course. So when you hear something is, oh, this is Poetry 101, that was just, they're saying that like it's the first lesson in blank. So that's what you're hearing when you hear 101. It occurred to me that like people aren't going to know what that means because that's not how they number classes anymore. It might even number that. They might not even have numbered them that way for your parents at this point. Maybe. Let's see. Next poem. One of my favorites. And this is actually probably where I'll be using the projector for a minute because I want to show you before we even start talking about it. I'll wait till we get to the part that actually talks about the painting. I just like this. I don't know exactly what it is about it, but I really like it. Anybody else really like it?
What?
Museé des Beaux.
Oh, I did that. I did.
Or I guess I could say, versus the Texans, Museé des Beaux Arts.
I did that one just because it was kind of like descriptive, like the old ones that we used to read all the time.
Yeah, it does have a lot of description in it, and I like the description once it gets to the paintings, and I like it when it comes before. And it says, about suffering they were never wrong, the old masters. How well they understood its human position. How it takes place while someone else is eating or opening a window or just walking dully along. So people suffer and yet things happen elsewhere. How, when the aged are reverently, passionately waiting for their miraculous birth, there always must be children who did not specially want it to happen, skating on a pond at the edge of the wood. So like somewhere when Jesus was being born, right? Like this is the miraculous birth. Jesus is born. No dad. Well, God, but just from a mom who never actually got, no father. It was just miraculous birth. Just the mom becomes pregnant. Somewhere, like in some country where it was nice and cold and the water had frozen, there was kids skating on a pond having a nice time. Like, wee! They don't know what's going on. They don't know it's the day Jesus is born. They never forgot that even the dreadful martyrdom must run its course anyhow in a corner, some untidy spot where the dogs go on with their doggy life and the torturer's horse scratches its innocent behind on the tree. Even like, what do they say? Or what does it say in the Bible, I think, about Jesus? Like, it's because it's talking about Jesus specifically here. Jesus dies on the cross. Whether like massive thunder, like an earthquake that ripped the curtain of the temple in two. The curtain meaning the opening, not an actual physical curtain. So everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But somewhere, nobody's feeling that earthquake. Or like right there on the spot. They got people hanging Jesus on the cross and there's a horse nearby and it's like, got this itch. He's just like, scratching his itchy butt on a tree because that's what the horses do. He didn't care. He's like, he probably doesn't even know what. He's like, okay, so there's a person over there, and for some reason he's not even thinking about why it's happening. He's a person, 2 sticks, no big deal. Dogs are going around doing doggy stuff. You know, they're like, yeah, there's that guy up there, but I'm still hungry. Could you? And he's like next to somebody's like leg, saying, man, I hope you drop some food. I put this phone in my pocket for when I took the pictures, and I forgot to take it back out. That's gonna be a weird transition on the video. It goes from like no rectangle to all of a sudden black rectangle's back, and it's like, gotta get there if nobody's paying attention. So, the big stuff in history always happens and somebody's not really paying attention. I told you all my 9/11 story, right?
No.
Yeah,
No?
Wasn't it you that didn't believe it?
Oh, no, I believed it. I just didn't think it was going to be a big deal. Because I was in college at the time and I was in my 101 courses. And I remember seeing a plane hit a tree, like, not a tree, a plane hit a building in New York as they were like, hey, so a plane hit a building in New York. And I was like, that's weird. And I went upstairs to get my books for my next class because I had an hour between my 9 o'clock and my 11 o'clock. I think that's about when it actually happened, was around that time. I mean, I could have my hours wrong about when I went to class. But so my hour layover, I went up to my class, got my books, came back down. And I was downstairs and I think I saw a replay or something. They showed a second plane hit the other building. And I was like, so somebody's done this on purpose. This isn't an accident. And I was like, I remember the first thought I had was, oh man, this is all we're going to talk about in class today.
I remember that.
I was like, that's all we're going to talk about. Like, we're going to get there and somebody's going to be like, somebody's going to say, oh, they attacked America. And what are we going to do? And I'm like, it's 2 planes hitting 2 buildings. Like, who cares? It's not even a big deal. Like, in terms of, like, the actual number of lives, like, lost. And, like, nobody's going to be able to attack. This isn't an attack on them. It's 2 planes. It's not like Pearl Harbor or something. And even then, Pearl Harbor is, like, way out there. And so I guess America generally gets pretty pissed when people do, small. And I didn't even think it was an attack against America. That was a couple of idiots flew planes into a couple of buildings. I didn't know it had, terrorism and stuff like that. I just thought. But I remember being really pissed about it because I had a life to live, and I was very annoyed at these news channels for even putting this on the TV.
A little bit morbid there, don't you?
Well, I mean, I was just like, I was 18 years old. I didn't have any dual credit college classes. I had been going to school and just doing high school things, and people are. The biggest stuff that would happen was like, hey, what's the theme for prom? And I was like, I don't care. That was all that happened for me. And then I went to college, and all of a sudden things were, I was having to grow up. And I didn't know that it was an important thing. And I think that that's often how I can imagine, like, what is a person going through in, like, I don't know, Poland, when they hear, oh, yeah, a plane hit a building in New York. I'm like, so? Like, I've got things to do today. Like, I don't need to worry about this. It's not a big deal. There's always going to be somebody like that who still has to live their life. And a lot of time, I'm sure there's a lot of people on 9/11 who are like, yeah, I'm sure that happened, but I've still got to get to work on time because I'm going to get fired if I don't. Like, I can't just sit here in front of the TV and, think about, oh, well, gosh, what happened? So I did want to hook up, once we get to the painting part of the poem. I think I almost broke the wall just then. Because I do already have it here. What? What was I whistling?
To me, it sounded like.
I guess. Which means later I'll be whistling enough that I notice it. Let's see. So this is the best colorizing that I could find of this painting. So this is Bruegel's Icarus, which we'll read it first. Can I make this? It's weird. I pushed the make it bigger button and it got smaller. Like, I hate that one. Like, you're like, this happened on The Office one time. Remember, it was like, she's like, oh, here's the picture, and it was like a little tiny picture that popped up in a separate window, and she hit maximize, and it was the same size. That's how I feel when like that kind of thing happens. I guess I can pinch zoom it. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we're not losing a whole lot. Okay, so I'm gonna just leave it there while I talk about this, and then we'll go back to the painting. And so remember, we've talked about how it's not a big deal to some people, like when big things happen in history. Like some people don't even notice it. It says, in Bruegel's Icarus, for instance, how everything turns away quite leisurely from the disaster. The plowman may have heard the splash, the forsaken cry, but for him it was not an important failure. The sun shone as it had to on the white legs disappearing into the green water, and the expensive, delicate ship that must have seen something amazing, a boy falling out of the sky, had somewhere to get to and sailed calmly on. Y'all know the story of Icarus, right?
Yeah.
I think it explains it down there, but basically, you know, his dad made them both wings that were out of like wax and stuff, and he said, now remember, don't fly too low or people will see you and freak out. Don't fly too high or get too close to the sun. It'll melt the wax on your wings and you'll fall. And he's like, whatever, Dad. Or like, yeah, I'll do it. And then, of course, it gets too high, flying, and melts, and he falls down the ocean. What now?
This legs.
Huh? Yeah. So there's the leg. So this painting is called, like this whole painting right here is called Icarus. There's Icarus's legs going into the water. That's the only part that's in the whole thing. You don't see the wings, you don't see anything. Like that's Icarus. That's his legs falling into the water. And so it kind of makes a good point about big moments in history, really, really important things. Because this guy right here, this guy's got to plow the land. Like he's like, what was that, a splash? Icarus is a huge story told in like mythology and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, it encapsulates like it's had effects on history, literature throughout the ages, art. But in terms of like the real effect on people who need to live their lives, like this guy's like, I still got to plow. Like this is not going to help anything. And then this ship right here, they're like, dude, you see that dude like splashing in the water from the sky? Really? We got to get this shipment there though by like tomorrow. So we got to keep going. And I actually think that, do you remember how like the polls, and I'm not talking about what I think should have happened or anything here, I'm just talking about the polls. You remember the polls for the presidential election last year?
No.
All the polls, this is one of the reasons I'm not really trusting polls anymore, no matter who puts them out, because methodology apparently is not perfect. So their polls were like, Hillary Clinton's going to win by a landslide. Everybody wants Hillary Clinton. So it's like, you know, Hillary Clinton's probably won like 2/3 of the electoral votes, right? But then it ended up going to Trump. And the key swing states all went to Trump. And it was like, well, how in the world did this happen? Because these are states that don't necessarily go. And a lot of the concerns of people, and you heard them, were, you know, Obamacare costs a lot of money. I have to buy insurance. I have to pay money for insurance that I didn't pay for before. And you have small business owners. I'm having to pay all this extra tax money to Obamacare, right? And then you've got Trump was promising to bring back a lot of like car job, like what is it, the auto industry, and get rid of the stigma on coal mining. You know, said this isn't hurting the environment. This is bullcrap. Like y'all should be able to still do your coal mining jobs. So in the places where there's lots of coal mining and different industries like that happening, you know, Trump was really pushing that message hard, and it was successful. And Trump was elected to the presidency, and a lot of people were just flabbergasted the next day, like, what happened? Like, the polls showed Clinton by far, and now Trump's the president. So what in the world's going on? And I think it's because people forgot this. And this very clearly shows people have concerns. I mean, sure, Trump is a little interesting in his tweets, right? He says exactly what he's thinking all the time. He has no history in politics, but he was saying all the right things to American people who work, right? This guy right here, they're like, dude, if somebody came up to him and said, there is a God over here in the water, and he's like, yeah, but I've got this field to plow. Like, could you find somebody else? You know, that's how people are. Like, great things may happen, but we still have to live and make a living. And I think that a lot of people forget that kind of thing, and that's exactly what happened. And as people forget this basic aspect of human nature, that, you know, we have concerns beyond the greatest, highest principles of art.
People that kept their mouths shut the whole time, and then whenever it came down to it, it was.
Yeah, like people are like nobody's calling with the poll people, or nobody's calling like rural Ohio, I guess, or whoever it went. Like, you know, nobody's calling the right people. But we asked everybody in the Washington Post office, and they all said Trump was not going to get the vote. Like, what's going on? Well, yeah, maybe you should choose different places. I started thinking at that moment maybe polls are like a political tool. Like they're just trying to. So I'm probably not going to follow. Like, it says Trump. Like I can't even trust. Like now, like I'm having trouble trusting. I mean, polls methodology. Honestly, the way you're going to know from a vote, you're not going to know from a poll. Because a poll, somebody may be embarrassed of who they're standing next to. They're like, yeah, we want to know who you're voting for in the election. Like you're right next to your wife, and they're like, I do not want her to know that I'm voting for Trump. Clinton. Definitely Clinton. And then like that night, you're like, oh, I'll just go secretly vote for Trump. You know, like a lot of people, they don't want people to know they're voting, but they're like, in terms of my pocketbook, I got to make the right decision.
Yeah, but people are.
You know? And so it's like they're going to go and tell the world, but they're going to do what they think is right. And so I think that this poem gets at something that, yes, great moments happen in history. Yes, big things are going on, but a lot of people don't care. A lot of people that doesn't even affect. People still have the same concerns tomorrow that they had yesterday, regardless of what happened in between. Unless that between is, I lost my job. Then it's a whole new world. What do y'all think about that?
Makes sense.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
There's a lot of people I know too, like, yeah, I really don't agree with anything he's saying about anything else. But the money stuff, I gotta vote for Trump for that reason. I ended up hearing a lot of people the day after saying they were like, yeah, I don't really agree with him on the whole like things he's saying about what is it like I don't know what his opinions were on like other things like abortion, gay marriage, and stuff. I knew his fiscal policies. But a lot of people just like, I don't like how he's talking about women in like that recording. And I don't really. You got a lot of Christian people voting for like a guy who's been divorced like 5 times, but it all came down to what is it doing to the finances? Because that's a lot of people. That's where their focus is. It's like finances and how I'm going to make my living day to day. What the money makes the world go. Yeah. A lot of people aren't just to the point where they can just I'm just going to forget about money and how that works. Like, people don't do that. People think
There's not that many people that do that.
there's not. These people are not either. They're like, what? Guy plashed into the water? No big deal. I got work to do. Now, in memory of W.B. Yeats, we have just read W.B. Yeats, so I think that it's actually because we spent a lot of time on W.B. Yeats, and I think we have a lot of time to spend on today. I think this poem, I can spend more time on this poem than I usually do. So William Butler Yeats, the guy who wrote Second Coming, Sailing to Byzantium, Under Ben Bulben, Easter 1916, that guy had just died on January 29, 1939. And Auden wrote this to him. And he's got different parts of it, and they're all written in kind of different poetic forms. So he writes, he disappeared in the dead of winter. The brooks were frozen, the airports almost deserted. It's interesting thinking of poetry that has airports in it. I don't know, it's very strange this whole semester we've had poetry that's basically with a lot of nature stuff because that's all that was really around, maybe even castles, but airports have started to appear in poems. That's when I think things start to take a turn. It's like, whoa, airports? It's crazy. Like now we have like the modern age creeping into poetry. And snow disfigured the public statues. You're just kind of supposed to think about this like images, almost like Wasteland a little bit. The mercury sank in the mouth of the dying day. It was getting colder. That's what it's talking about, mercury sinking. All the instruments agree the day of his death was a dark, cold day. And it's interesting he's saying all the instruments agree that the day of his death was a dark, cold day. Because to him, a poet, W.B. Yeats's death was a dark, cold day on an emotional level. But he's talking about, oh yes, all the instruments agree. He's a very skeptical, like pessimistic guy, as you saw in like As I Walked Out One Evening, Museé des Beaux. It's like people aren't going to care about big things happening. They care more about what's going on with them. And he says here, the only reason that it was a dark, cold day to the rest of the world was because technically the temperature was lower. So it was dark and cold to everybody else too because it was snowing that day. That's the only reason it was dark and cold to anybody else besides him. Far from his illness, the wolves ran on through the evergreen forest. The peasant river was untempted by the fashionable quays. By morning tongues, the death of the poet was kept from his poems. So again, in the first 3 lines here, we have essentially Museé des Beaux again. It's like, yeah, the wolves ran on. They didn't know Yeats had died. The peasant river was untempted by the fashionable quays. And then we have in the next couple lines, by morning tongues, the death of the poet was kept from his poems. So people continued to read him in honor of him after he died. So yes, he died, but the poems themselves did not. The poems continue on. But for him, it was his last afternoon as himself. An afternoon of nurses and rumors. The provinces of his body revolted. The squares of his mind were empty. Silence invaded the suburbs. The current of his feeling failed. He became his admirers. Does anybody know what that means? He became his admirers? Like he literally became his admirers.
Does that mean he's like falling to what they think he should be?
Well, he's dead.
So his admirers all died too?
What now?
His admirers died too?
No,
He
it's a
lived
little
on
tricky.
Only to his admirers.
Yes, he lived on only in the minds of his admirers. So in terms of like, he dies in body and in spirit, basically just becomes his poetry and lives on in those who knew him through his poetry. This happens in our lives as well. Like when a granddad dies, everybody here remembers the granddad. That granddad lives on in the people, his family. Yeats lives on a more massive scale with a lot of people being aware of his inner thoughts with the poetry. And then it says, now he is scattered among 100 cities and wholly given over to unfamiliar affections, to find his happiness in another kind of wood. What? Dante's Inferno. In the middle of the journey of our life, I came to myself in a dark wood where the straight way was lost. Okay. I guess he provided that note. And be punished under a foreign code of conscience. Oh, okay. The words of a dead man are modified in the guts of a living. So now he's gone, scattered about. People are starting to read his poetry, and now he's punished under a foreign code. That's actually difficult for me. But I wanted to get to the next stanza more importantly. In the importance and noise of tomorrow, when the brokers are roaring like beasts on the floor of the bourse, and the poor have the sufferings to which they are fairly accustomed. Again, it's just like that last poem we read. Things keep going on. And each in the cell of himself is almost convinced of his freedom. Oh, I should disconnect this and put me back on camera. Because I know y'all want me on camera. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, I moved the screen, so I gotta move it back. All right. And we're back. And we go to there we go. Okay, so it says, and each in the cell of himself is almost convinced of his freedom. A few thousand will think of this day as one thinks of a day when one did something slightly unusual. Not like, whoa, that's the day that Yeats died. Like, remember that day? That was a weird day. Like that's it's like they're not gonna remember anything else beyond that. It's kind of like even if you think back to the day of like maybe the funeral of somebody that you knew, You probably were living the day prior normally. You lived the day after, maybe the next few days after might have been a little bit difficult, but like maybe a week later you're moving on. It might have been a weird week. Then after that,
it's just like adjusting to that person literally like being gone.
Yeah, but for the most part, you still live on as yourself, and that's kind of how it becomes. That was a day I did something that felt weird. It's sad, but it's kind of how we are. Kind of like the opposite of John Donne, where he said, "No man is an island." Everybody's life matters to every one of us. Like it's almost like, yeah, it does, but. And then he says next, "Oh, all the instruments agree the day of his death was a dark, cold day." So the instruments themselves are all that really think that it's dark on a true level. It's the people themselves. They try, but as much as they can, they can't. Or as much as they can try, they still can't. And he says number 2 here, "You were silly like us," talking to Yeats specifically, I guess. "Your gifts survived it all, the perish of rich women, physical decay, yourself." So he was still a great poet, even close to death. "Mad Ireland hurt you into poetry. Now Ireland has her madness and her weather still, for poetry makes nothing happen. It survives in the valley of its saying, where executives would never want to tamper. It flows south from ranches of isolation, the busy griefs, raw towns that we believe and die in. It survives, a way of happening, a mouth." And I like that. He's such a pessimistic guy. He says, "For poetry makes nothing happen." Because he said Ireland was mad, like crazy, and it had bad weather. And then Ireland and the craziness and bad weather got you so inspired you started writing poetry. And you're like, I will write to change Ireland, or at least to sing its praises. Yeats starts writing poetry. And then he dies, and then Ireland is still mad and crazy, and it still has the weather. Nothing really changed, despite you writing this great poetry. The people acknowledge this great poetry. Because he says, "For poetry makes nothing happen." A sad idea. I should read this poem to my dad. He'd love it. He's like, "See, Chris, it's right there in your own poetry. It says it's useless." My dad said I should have done something in computers. "What are you doing in English? What a waste." Well, he thinks composition's important. Knowing how to write's important. He doesn't think the stories and poems are important. Here we go. 3, the next section. And it has a note down here. It says the stanza pattern of this section echoes that of Yeats' late poem Under Bolbin, and Auden later omitted the section's 2nd, 3rd, and 4th stanzas. So he actually didn't include the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th stanzas, which I tend to agree with, but we'll still read them here. In fact, let's read it first without that. I think maybe you'll find that it sounds better that way. Earth, it's almost like he's saying what he would say at the guy's funeral. "Earth, receive an honored guest. William Yeats is laid to rest. Let the Irish vessel lie emptied of its poetry. In the nightmare of the dark, all the dogs of Europe bark. And the living nations wait, each sequestered in its hate. Intellectual disgrace stares from every human face, and the seas of pity lie locked and frozen in each eye. Follow, poet, follow right to the bottom of the night. With your unconstraining voice still persuade us to rejoice." This is probably my favorite stanza here. "With the farming of a verse, make a vineyard of the curse. Sing of human unsuccess in a rapture of distress. In the deserts of the heart, let the healing fountain start. In the prison of his days, teach the free man how to praise." So he's actually telling him in his death what to do for us. He's saying, here's what's happening. This is what people are right now. Poet, still do what you need to do. And I think that my favorite stanza here, with the farming of a verse, make a vineyard of the curse. So farming a verse meaning essentially cultivating, growing, then doing a harvest of your poem. I think it's finally ready. I think it's ripe, ready to go. Make a vineyard of the curse. So the curse that's upon mankind, all the curses upon mankind. There's no necessarily individual one. Basically, I think he's talking about here, sing of human unsuccess. So he's make it into ripe, wonderful wine. that which man's difficulties are. Sing of human unsuccess in a rapture of distress. You know what a rapture is?
In the Bible?
Yeah. It's like yeah,
That's what a lot of, I mean, that is true. It's called, does anybody know what it's called, the rapture? Like that particular, the coming back of Jesus and the taking of people to heaven. Because the word rapture is just another word for, in fact, I'll look it up in the dictionary to be sure, but it's like intense and like pure joy. So a lot of people are terrified of the idea of Jesus coming, like, what if I'm not ready? But rapture, technically, if you're set to go, a state or feeling of great happiness, pleasure, or love. And it says often in its capitalized form, the final assumption of Christians into heaven during the end time according to Christian theology. Because if you think about it, like, it's just humans going to heaven, like, oh, that's great. So purely joyous. So that's why it's called the rapture, like the day of intense joy that's going to be coming. So when he's saying here, sing of human unsuccess, it's really, isn't it weird? It's like not saying sing of human failure. He's saying human unsuccess. Why would he say unsuccess and not failure? Why would he say sing of human unsuccess instead of human failure?
Because
I don't think there's a right answer here, so don't feel bad about it.
Because I guess you didn't fail. Because you can still go if you even after it happens.
Ooh, I think you're so close, and I think that I'm going to agree with what you're saying in the direction you're going. Say it again, but
Like you're not completely failed if after it happens, but because you can still go, right? Even if it's
yes, because I mean, even in failure, you can still eventually succeed, and you can have the hope to succeed. So you're not gone to failure, you're not resigned to it. It's not, and I mean that's what people are, right? I mean, especially in America where we have the American dream. If it once you don't succeed, try again. Is that even if you fail today, you can succeed tomorrow. So he's talking about human unsuccess, not like human failure, like, oh, we failed and it's over. It's actually kind of funny. I think that I read that there were certain schools in Britain, like public schools, that they said it was depressing to students to know that they had failed a class. Like the F on their transcript actually made them less likely to want to keep trying. Like they would just quit school. So some of the schools started, instead of giving Fs, they would give a grade that was deferred success. Meaning they've put off success for now, but they'll succeed later. So I think it's not the same thing, but it's similar. It's like saying human unsuccess. So for the moment, success has not happened. It's non-success. It's success that isn't success.
That's true.
Essentially failure, but failure sounds more permanent. Success, it can still happen if you say unsuccess. And he says, in a rapture of distress. So in an intense joy of distress. There really is a sense of rapture in Yeats's poem. Like there is so much passion, and he seems like he's got pure just joy at the way he's putting words together. That when I read Second Coming, it's such a pure poem, and like it gets down to like pure essences of like words and getting everything in exactly the right place. Very, very detailed, yes. And all the words sounded like eminently quotable in the lines themselves.
Tell me more about that. Basically, the states, right? Like it has that one part about the states.
Right, and it's saying like what was it? It says like a shape with lion body and the head of a man.
Yes, something like
a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun. I don't know. Those phrases are just really good.
And then it was like
Is moving its slow thighs.
the good have no conviction, but the worst people have intense passion or whatever. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the ideas themselves. Yeah, I mean, even like I would consider. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Preston. You're not a huge fan of the poetry we've been reading, right? But this one poem, you remember quite a few like concepts and lines from it,
Yeah.
despite the fact because they're so like purely boiled down to their essence, and they sound really good that you remember them, even though you didn't really care too much for them, because they're that good. It's like he had a pure joy when he was writing it, and that came out. It was a rapture of distress. He's distressed about what's going on in the world, but like he writes with such a passion that it's almost like joyous what he's got. It's almost like somebody who like is a glutton for punishment. You ever heard that before? You know, gluttony is the idea. I think is it Catholic? Does anybody know? I can't remember if it's one. I don't know if 7 deadly sins is Catholic or something else. I don't remember where it comes from. I know it's a religious idea, but I don't remember where it comes from. Which religion? It's Christianity. But gluttony is eating too much, like just constantly taking stuff in and can't stop yourself. And like a glutton for punishment is somebody who constantly takes in punishment and seems to almost enjoy it. So in a rapture of distress, he's like writing poetry after poetry after poem after poem after poem about how sad and terrible things are, and just loves it. Like, loves the act of writing poetry itself, despite the fact that he's writing about such terrible, terrible things. And in the deserts of the heart, let the healing fountain start. In the prison of his day, teach a free man how to praise. That's Auden. Let's move on to probably the one that people generally like the most. How am I turning perfectly to every page? It's crazy. Dylan Thomas, do not go gentle into that good night. Has anybody watched Interstellar?
No.
What would you say it is that you kids do? What do you do? You don't watch movies.
I watch movies in the movie theater, but it's mainly like comedies.
Girls Trip. Yeah, that movie was so funny.
You're just scratching your innocent behind on a tree, like with the movies you watch.
I watch TV shows.
Oh yeah, series on Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix series.
YouTube.
Okay, are they good series, or are you watching like the crap series?
Have you seen Riverdale?
No, I said good series.
Yeah, and I said the vampire.
Everdale?
Riverdale.
Is that the high school show?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's more about the town.
Oh yeah,
Involving
Riverdale's
the high
good.
schoolers.
That's how you
That almost sounds like a renew of like Friday Night Lights
I
or
just
something.
watched Disney.
Well,
Oh,
it's like-
that's a good show.
Friday Night Lights is centered on football. It's more like the drama with the town. It includes football, includes high school, includes the adults. It's like just the town is called Riverdale. It's pretty
It's a
interesting.
good name for a town. I was just curious because like Interstellar, I consider to be like probably
I've heard of it.
it's a great film. Like, and it's one of the best films that's come out in the last probably 5 or 6 years to me.
I've never seen it.
Me
I
neither.
don't know, Tropic Thunder was.
But this poem,
So is Monsters University.
this poem, guys, plays heavily in that film. Like really, really heavily. I think it's one of those poems that's easier to understand than it looks. I think a lot of you maybe liked it because it's repetitive and because that repetition, it sounds like, oh, this makes sense. Like I hear the same things over and over again. I like this. It's like a song, right? The songs you hear all the time have a chorus, and you're like, the chorus, we're back there. I know the chorus. Repeating things makes us like things more. Did you know that they found that the most successful songs, the ones that are purchased the most, are generally the ones that are the most repetitive?
Like mostly chorus.
Yeah, like lots and lots of chorus repeats, things that it calls back to.
I guess because it's catchy and you like.
Think of like Adele's "Hello." It was like every verse starts with "Hello," and you're like, I recognize that. I just heard "Hello." Yeah, songs like, and I'm talking about like literally like words that repeat over and over again. Baby, baby, baby. Oh, like baby, baby, baby. Like it doesn't. It's terrible. It's written horribly. But because it's repetitive, people are like, hey, I know that word because I just heard it like a half second. Oh, and then the next word, and the next word. So maybe that's part of why people like Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. Or maybe you like it for real reason. Yes?
I think you'd like Bo Burnham's repeat stuff.
I like all of his stuff. He's pretty funny. Oddly enough, I didn't like when he made fun of that country song. Like, I didn't think he did a very good job with it.
It's a scarecrow.
Maybe I just didn't like the fact that he was singing country. I don't know what it was. Do not go gentle into that good night. Or I guess I'm not reading it with the gravity it should have, am I? Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late, they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Brave men near death, grave men near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. It's interesting. It's sometimes he's using these two lines that are repeating over and over again as commands, and sometimes he's issuing them as like I can't remember. It's been so long since I've even talked about this. Isn't it the three types of sentences are imperative, informative, and interrogative? Questions, statements, and commands. The imperative, so it's like some of the times he's using this in the imperative sense, where he's saying, hey, don't go gentle, like telling you not to do it. Sometimes he's saying, this is what they are doing. They don't go gentle. So at the beginning he's saying, don't do this. And he's telling you old age should burn and rave at close of day. So as you're old, you shouldn't just give yourself up to death. You should fight it. And it says rage. He's telling you to rage against the dying of the light. But then he switches the way he uses those phrases for most of the rest of the poem. And he says, wise men know at the end that dark is like, like if you're really wise, you know that death is the way thing is supposed to go, right? But because their words had forked no lightning, what does that mean? Like their words had forked no lightning?
Not powerful.
I think so. Like if you consider yourself a wise man, or a wise man, or if people consider you a wise man, like I read something today by, does anybody know who Carl Sagan was? He was a famous, I think he was an astrophysicist or somehow important scientist. But he wrote a lot of stuff that appealed to popular people as well. And I wonder if he would have felt like one of these wise men if he knew what happened. He wrote, I have a foreboding of an America in my children's or grandchildren's time when the United States is a service and information economy, when nearly all the key manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of a very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues. When the people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority, when clutching our no, not that part. Where's the part I'm looking for? Oh, the dumbing down of America is most evident in the slow decay of substantive content in the enormously influential media, the 30-second sound bites, now down to 10 seconds or less, lowest common denominator programming, credulous presentations on pseudoscience and superstition, but especially a kind of celebration of ignorance. And he wrote, as I write, the #1 video cassette rental in America is the movie Dumb and Dumber. Beavis and Butthead remains a popular and influential TV show with young viewers. The plain lesson is a study and learning, not just of science, but of anything, are avoidable, even undesirable. So this guy was saying we're quickly slipping closer to an America where people don't care, that people don't value education or learning or reading at all. And he's like, this is bad. And people were like, yeah, way to go, Carl Sagan. That's a great book. That is happening. We should worry about that. And what do we have happening now? Almost every state is, well, not every state, but many states are defunding education, and you see tuition costs rise at universities, and a lot of people act like, well, that's just colleges realizing that they can charge that much. No. Colleges don't want to charge that much. Colleges have to charge that much because the state's taking away their money, and the federal government's taking away their money. Because when we had the recession in 2008, they said, where can we take away money? And they said, hey, we give a lot of money to education. Let's take it away. Little bits at a time and see if they can handle it. And now everybody's pissed that we charge so much for books. Well, the book companies, I think they realize they can handle. Well, they're also worried about ebooks too, so they're trying to, anybody who's ever bought a used book, that's a problem for textbook companies, because they go, oh, somebody else is just going to buy it used. Isn't it weird that that's something we don't do as much with, say, like novels? People are like, oh, new novel come in, I got to have that immediately, almost like it's a movie. But nobody goes, oh, I got to get that new edition of that textbook. People don't do that. But just a general consequence over time of learning not being important. was exactly what this guy said. And I wonder if he's like turning in his grave right now, because it says, wise men at their end know dark is right. Yes, I'm ready to go into the abyss, because I know that I think Carl Sagan was actually an atheist, if I had to guess, based on all the other things he said. So he figured once he died, it was all over. But because his words had actually forked no lightning, because it had inspired no giant, passionate change, no actual friction in the world to bring about some change, he's like, I spoke all the time for no reason. Not no reason, but nobody seems to care. Like, he's like, I've got the right answers and nobody seems to care about them. It's sad. And that's why they get so upset. That's why they don't go gentle. Good men the last way by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in Green Bay. They rage because they have regrets. One guy's like, I tried to tell people, but they didn't listen. These other guys are, we wanted to do things, but they weren't good enough. Wild men who caught the sang and sun, well, wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight. So like passionate people who are like, you know, like people who like go hiking and they're like, you know, I'm gonna go travel to Italy and get drunk and just see all the beauty in the world. The whole time you're doing all that stuff, when you're trying to catch and sang the sun in flight, like we have in Sun Rising, where he's like, the sun does all it does here shining on us, right? Realizing that all you're doing is grieving the sun on its way. As much as you might try to outlive the sun's you're gonna die. It's gonna happen. You can't outlive the sun. You can do whatever you can with life. I was listening to Harold Bloom the other day on a podcast. He said, if people had only at least like 140 years to live instead of 70, then they would have time to read everything and they wouldn't freak out as much. People would still freak out when they die. People freak out. If we live 400 years, we'd be like, I haven't seen everything yet. It's just us. Grave men near death. And this is the one that's always confused me. Who see with blinding sight. And I'm assuming the word that has been removed. Grave men near death. So they're about to die. Who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Maybe they're saying like grave men who are near death. I wonder if it's talking about seeing blinding sight. Like you're seeing, is that like seeing white before you die? You know, like they always say like you see, what is it, everything turns white, or like you see, what am I talking about? You've heard that before, right?
Yeah, you see
the white light, that's what oh my gosh, I couldn't think of it. So the white light comes, it's blinding, and it's like, oh my gosh, and you're like, you're dying, and you're like, hell, I don't care. Like if all I do is sit here and everything's white for freaking the rest of my life, if everything's pure darkness for the rest of my life, I'd be happy being blind if I could just find out that I'm living longer and not dying in this moment. Like, oh, that's freaky. My wife has that purse. Like that exact one. I was like, you stole. That's not calling you out. It's a cool purse.
Okay.
How's that calling out? It's crazy.
Just have to be quiet.
Oh, okay. Well, my bad. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Well, yeah, nobody else knows that you're going to go. But I knew. Yeah, it's a cool purse. I like the colors. My wife wanted me to get her the black and brown one, not the white and gold one, because she likes those colors better. And she's right. So let's see. So he says, and you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Don't go gentle into that good night, rage against dying away. It was like, please, Dad, come on. You rage too. You should. It's a plea. Next we have Philip Larkin. Church going. Oh yeah, people talked about church going the most, didn't they? Wasn't that the one that they mostly talked about? Because it had the word church in it?
Yeah, I saw a lot of church going, just such a list.
I think so. A lot of church goings.
I didn't see very many about the,
Aubade.
no, most of whatever.
Oh yeah, the Museé. Yeah, you were the only one, I think.
I think I was like, no.
I think you were. There might have been somebody who included it in theirs, but yeah, it was good. It was a good one. Good. Let's do church going. So I have to preface this. I didn't mention this the other day, but Larkin is definitely an atheist. He does not believe in God. So he's writing this poem about going to a church, and he himself does not believe at all. And so it's very interesting when you think about that perspective as you start to read this poem. He says, once I am sure there's nothing going on, I step inside, letting the door thud shut. Another church. Matting, seats, and stone, and little books. He calls the Bible little books. There's little books everywhere. Sprawlings of flowers cut for Sunday, brownish now. So it's a church that's still being used. It's just he's gone in there on a day when it's not church service. So I'm assuming it's a Catholic church, because don't Catholic churches remain open all the time? Like you can go in there and like pray or see the. Because like my church, like the doors are locked when there's nobody there. Like yeah, I think I'm pretty sure it's the Catholic ones that stay.
Yeah.
Because you can go every morning and pray at a Catholic church, as far as as far as I know. You can go in there, and there's even morning mass every day, isn't there? Depending on how big the area is.
There's mass 2 days a week, I believe, for Catholics.
Oh, really? Well,
And they go to this church like all day long on Sundays.
So my assumption is it's a Catholic church. I mean, it could be an Anglican church, because I don't know what the Anglican church is like, and he's in England. Some brass and stuff up at the Holy Inn. Isn't it weird how he's talking like all the stuff that you like? If you've ever been to church before and you think of the stuff there, you think of it with sort of reverence. You know, like there's the parts of your church that even the pews are holy, the flowers are holy, the stuff up there is the holy, the baptismal is holy. I'm talking about the stuff at my church. So I think of all that stuff as like, oh, yeah. So you would never like say, oh, yeah, there's some brass and stuff. You know, it just sounds like he's speaking very flippantly about it. Like, just some stuff up there. Don't know why it's there. Kind of reminds me of like, there's always those movies where something really important. What is a good example? Like, I can't think of a movie right now, but like a movie where like the main character's got some really important object or item for their quest, and they get caught by somebody who doesn't know who they are, and is like taking the item from them and is going like, and like this thing could like totally kill them if they knew what to do with it. Like they would like die if they sniffed it the wrong way, but they're like, and they toss it, and you're like, oh, you know, like, oh wait, I'm kind of thinking like, this isn't the best example, but Guardians of the Galaxy, when like the Infinity Stone, everybody's like, what is this little thing? Like, you know, this little circle, this little ball, like you drop it and roll it and stuff, and like nobody knows like that thing could totally kill everybody if they be bad. And that's how he kind of talks about some brass and stuff. It's like a little, you know, couple of sticks with a little fella on it. I think that was the joke they made in Family Guy. He's like, do you have one of those little things with the fella on it? Talking about the cross with Jesus on it.
Yeah.
It's kind of how he talks about this. And a tense, or a small, neat organ, and a tense, musty, unignorable silence brewed God knows how long. And he's using the Lord's name in vain, a poem about church going. Because it's not the Lord's name in vain to him. Hatless, I take off my cycle clips in awkward reverence. I have no idea what cycle clips are. I tried to figure it out. I don't know. I did. I couldn't find it. I looked, but maybe I wasn't looking the right way or searching for it right. It doesn't give me any kind of hint for what this is. Move forward, run my hand around the font. From where I stand, the roof looks almost new, cleaned or restored. Someone would know. I don't. Mounting the lectern, I peruse a few hectoring large-scale verses, so I guess it's a church where at the podium they keep a Bible that just sits there. And pronounce, here endeth, much more loudly than I'd meant. The echoes snigger briefly. It's interesting. The echoes snigger. I think like snigger's meant to be like a laughter. So it's like he says, here endeth, and it's like, like it sounds like somebody's laughing a little bit. Back at the door, I sign the book, donate an Irish sixpence, reflect the place was not worth stopping for. It's interesting. He donates money for his stop there, despite the fact he doesn't believe in the church itself or what the church believes. It's very interesting that he would donate money to a church that he isn't necessarily in. And he says here, the place is not worth stopping for. Yet stop I did. In fact, I often do, and always end much at a loss like this. wondering what to look for, wondering too when churches fall completely out of use what we shall turn them into, if we shall keep a few cathedrals chronically on show, their parchment, plate, and picks in locked cases, and let the rest rent free to rein in sheep. Shall we avoid them as unlucky places? So when he thinks that nobody no longer needs churches or wants churches, what'll they be? And starts to imagine different uses for it, of course. Or after dark will dubious women come to make their children touch a particular stone, pick simples for a cancer, or on some advised night see a walking a dead one. Power of some sort or other will go on in games and riddles seemingly at random, but superstition, like belief, must die. And what remains when disbelief is gone? It's interesting, his first stanza that he's talking about, he's wondering if it will basically be like a museum, or we let them go back to nature. And then the next one he says, or will it be almost like a medium, like almost tarot card readers, in the way it's like just superstition, stones and crystal balls and things. And some people will come and like, you get this little bone you just get this little piece of wood from the pew at the church, and you make a tea with that in it. It'll help ward off evil spirits or something like that. Kind of some silliness or something like that. So, I mean, he's thinking of all different kinds of uses it might have. He says, what remains when disbelief is gone? So when people no longer even believe in anything, like even superstition. Like once people are completely and totally as a species rational and don't look for explanations of things. They just find the real physical world explanation of everything. Grass, weedy pavement, brambles, buttress, sky, a shape less recognizable each week, a purpose more obscure. I wonder who will be the last, the very last, to seek this place for what it was. One of the crew that tap and jot and know what rude lofts were, some ruined bibber randy for antique or Christmas addict, counting on a whiff of gown and bands and organ pipes and myrrh. People who literally seek it as a church. Like, he's talking about the very last person to say, I'm coming to this place because it's a church. And like a Christmas addict is like he's saying, like somebody like, these used to be the reason for the Christmas. We all know Christmas, right, Jimmy? Oh yeah, it's where we get the presents. Yes, used to be based on Christ. Oh, it's not just called Christmas? No, Christ was a church thing. This is a church where you went to talk about the Christ. Oh, that's where the presents come from. That's right, honey. Not Santa? No Santa. Or will he be my representative? I don't know if he's talking about an atheist necessarily or just somebody who doesn't already believe, somebody who comes to use a church for what exactly it's, somebody who knows what a church is, not necessarily believing in it, but is coming to at least make use of it for what it is. Bored, uninformed, knowing the ghostly silt dispersed, yet tending to this cross of ground. And it's talking about cross of ground because they actually said down here it used to be literally shaped like crosses, the buildings. Through suburb scrub because it held unspilt so long and equably what sense is found only in separation. I'm going to read that again because I kind of messed it up. Or will he be my representative, bored, uninformed, knowing the ghostly silt dispersed, yet tending to this cross of ground through suburb scrub, because it held unspilt so long, and equably, what sense is found only in separation? Marriage, and birth, and death, and thoughts of these. Because you think people get married in churches, still do to this day. Even people, a lot of times who are atheists will get married in a church. It's prettier. Why is it prettier? Because it seems like a place of reverence, a place of importance, a place where things like that are meant to happen. And birth, babies are born, they get baptized in the little basin, bin, tub. I mean, what is used to baptize babies?
It's a tub.
Is it a little tub? Like a tub?
Yeah.
Does it look very...
A nice tub.
I don't know.
A nice tub?
Babies, I feel like babies is like don't they just do a cross on their forehead?
You
With
can
holy water.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought they had to
That's how
actually
they
dunk the
do it
baby.
in Catholic churches, right?
Oh, the sprinkle. Like the sprinkle of water?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that too. Well, but like if you're like older, they dip you in the whole.
So marriage is involved.
Well, I don't know, because my cousin, he was like almost 3 when he got baptized, and they dunked him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but if we're talking about like hardcore babies,
Might depend on the age.
Yeah, because like the age you put them on there, kids are.
Well, no, I did that like when I was like 12, and then I got dumped or whatever, but if we're talking about like hardcore baby, then
What exactly is a hardcore baby? Because you keep saying this, and I'm just like, oh, so what I would say is like straight up baby, like
Straight up.
full on baby. Like my baby right now, where my baby is like really trying to figure out how to control how to get her hand into her mouth. She's like she just keeps looking at it and it moves, and eventually she stops paying attention and goes. Or like it's just weird, and then she'll start chewing on it. It's the craziest thing.
Do you think she can handle herself getting dumped in a tub of water?
I think they found that if you blow on a baby's face right before it goes underwater, it actually hold its breath.
I don't think they do it.
Actually true. No, they don't do it that way, but you actually could. I probably wouldn't do that to her, but so here we have marriage, birth, and death. Funerals still take place in churches, correct? Most funerals you go to happen in a church.
Yes. Wait,
Sometimes they'll be outside next to the cemetery.
Oh, well,
I've been to one in a church, but usually they're at a funeral home.
I don't think I've ever been to a funeral that's at a church.
Really?
I've been to
Only
one
funeral
at a
homes.
church.
I've been to lots at churches.
well, you also,
Only funeral homes.
Interesting. I've gone to visitations at funeral homes. That happens a lot. But I've been to more funerals at churches.
I can't say I ever have.
It's really interesting to me.
I've been to a funeral at our high school. That was just for shadow.
Well, maybe one day it's exactly what he's talking about, where we won't be using churches for those anymore. So they used to contain all the thoughts of these: marriage, birth, death. People, that's a lot of what's talked about in the church is marriage, birth, and death, and all the stuff that's around that. I mean, essentially, if you think about it, almost all the, if you can think about every single, I don't know about that. For which was built this special shell? Which one? And he says, and this is where I think it gets what I like about this. He says, for though I have no idea what this accoutred frowsty barn is worth, it pleases me to stand in silence here. A serious house on serious earth it is, in whose blent air all our compulsions meet, are recognized and robed as destinies. And that much never can be obsolete, since someone will forever be surprising a hunger in himself to be more serious, and gravitating with it to this ground which once heard was proper to go wise in, if only that so many dead lie aground. I think he's at least hoping that churches will never completely be forgotten. Because he said there's always going to be somebody somewhere thinking seriously and wanting to grow wiser. And if we ever get to a point where there's nobody left who's trying to nobody who's surprising a hunger in themselves to be more serious, then I guess that's the day. But I don't think he thinks that that'll ever come. I think he thinks that churches will always maintain some level of significance because people will always want to grow wiser in. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I was like, even if education, like did I ask y'all one day, I said, is there any place that you can think of where people voluntarily go and get educated? Like week after week?
You asked about that?
Yeah, beyond school. And I don't think anybody said it, but
Church.
yeah, church is. I mean, essentially people go there once a week to listen to a guy talk about Jesus. And there's a lot of people who do. I know many of you might not, but what I'm saying is a lot of people still do that. And they don't recognize that as a form of education, but it is. They're all trying to sit there and know more and grow wiser.
yeah, I mean, the only reason I ever went to church, there was forced. The only thing that made it, worthwhile were the donuts. There's so many donuts.
The church had donuts?
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of churches that have
The
donuts.
only
Where
churches
you
I've
go.
been to that have the donuts was I went to a Methodist church and had donuts. That's it.
The Methodist over by, towards the West Walkman,
Yeah.
the big one.
They had good little
Yeah.
boxes,
They are.
but you had to get there early, or the donuts would be gone. And there would just be like 2 hours of this man preaching and being boring and.
Well, but you get crackers and grape juice, though, right?
No,
That's not a Catholic
Crackers and gravy.
I think that only happened like once a month.
Okay,
They gave out
whatever.
stuff.
Yeah, we
The
do.
one next to the Methodist.
But even then, it wasn't very good.
I mean,
It is a
I don't know if it's a dog.
Looks like we're getting even closer to the possible disappearance of church buildings with you guys.
Is that all cafeterias? But
You're like, oh man, that place great for donuts.
Yeah, that's exactly
Donuts,
what it was.
some places have different types of food, but that's interesting. That's what occupies the thoughts. All right, here we go. Let's go to 2847 with Aubade. Let's talk about his very depressed. This is a great poem to end the semester on, isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it a fun poem to end the semester on?
Yeah.
Aubade? Guys, Aubade. Aubade? And I think Enrique, weren't you the one that pointed out what this was, what an Aubade was? Or was it somebody else?
That was Kaya in her.
Kaya, okay. Which I just wanted to look up again and read. It's a song or poem greeting the dawn, which technically he is in this poem, because the dawn is coming, because he woke up at like 4 a.m. because he's really old and that's what he does. He talks about what he does now in his life. How long did he live? I'm very curious. I didn't look that up ahead of time. He lived from 1922 to 1985, so he lived to be 63, which is not that old. He wrote this in 77, so that was only like 11 years before he died. Is that right? That was 8 years before he died, so it wasn't that long before he died. I just flipped the page and lost my spot. So he said, I work all day and get half drunk at night. Waking at 4 to soundless dark, I stare. In time, the curtain edges will grow light. You know, because the curtains are closed, but the sun's going to come and you'll see the edges of the curtain start to have light. Until then, I see what's really always there. Unresting death, a whole day nearer now. Making all thought impossible, but how and where and when I shall myself die. Arid interrogation. Yet the dread of dying and being dead flashes afresh to hold and horrify. So he lays there in the dark every morning. Can you imagine waking up and going like, it's dark as anything because he doesn't have any like night lights on, the window, the sun's not coming up yet, it's 4 a.m. and he's like, is this it? Have I died? Guess not. When will I? Because you're thinking, am I dead? Nope. But then that immediately makes you think, well, when will it happen? And he's past 50 at this point. It says, flashes afresh to hold and horrify. I imagine that's good. I mean, he's saying this at 50, like 55. I'm already at least becoming aware that my body's not going to last forever. That's a depressing thought. I thought for sure it would earlier, but now my knees. Did I talk about my knees already today?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Twice in a day. It's getting worse. Actually, I don't feel that bad right now, but I'm standing. They said, of the darkness. This is interesting. It says the mind blanks at the glare. The glare? Like not an actual glare of light, because there's no light yet. The mind blanks at the glare, not remorse, not the good not done, the love not given, time torn off unused, nor wretchedly because an only life can take so long to climb clear of its wrong beginnings and may never. So he's saying he's not worried about death because he regrets anything. Because that's occupied a lot of our poems, has it not? This like regret, like people regret. You know, we got the To the Mouse poem. We got a lot of, I think Wordsworth is like, now I can't go back to the past. Not necessarily talking about regret there, but people can't exactly reconnect with the past. Huh? Yeah, Tinsford Abbey. Talking about how he can't technically go back to the past. So there is an idea of regret there. Time moves on. That's another sense of regret. But he's saying not for that. Nor because time is short. He's more scared of what happens after death. He says, but at the total emptiness forever, the sure extinction that we travel to and shall be lost in always. Not to be here, not to be anywhere. And soon, nothing more terrible, nothing more true. And I think that has two different meanings there. He's saying there's nothing more terrible than what's afterwards and nothing more true than nothing. So the sentence itself means two things. They say nothing itself, the idea of nothingness, is more true than anything we can possibly think of. Nothingness is more terrible than anything we can think of. If you think you're going to die and go to hell, nothingness is worse than hell, because in hell at least you still exist. The idea of nothingness, to not exist anymore, is horrifying. I don't know if he would have had trouble conceiving of, as I often do, maybe because of this poem, maybe I'd already thought about this ideas in this poem before, but remember I've talked a lot about how I have trouble understanding even the idea of suicide, maybe because I haven't had a bad life. I mean, I've had difficult times in my life, but never have I considered myself to have a bad life. But the idea that somebody would rather literally experience nothingness. Maybe somebody thinks that they commit suicide, they go to like a heaven or something. Maybe they think they go to a hell, I don't know. But if you think that you're going to nothing, like to something so bad that you would go to nothingness, I can't imagine. It's not relief. So you say like, oh, this is so bad that if I die, I'll be relieved. No, it'll just mean that you only ever existed in pain, with no possibility of relief. Because once you die, there's no relief. It's just nothingness. So you go from pain to nothing, which is horrifying to me. So I don't think I could ever quite do it. It's hard for us to conceive of nothingness. I think that there is an essence in ourselves where we have this feeling that we're all immortal. I mean, can we really truly conceive of the idea that we won't exist? Because even if you think about like what it'll mean in a moment. Like imagine yourself like you die, right? And you're really old. Imagine yourself really old, not now, but you're really old and you die. And then assume that, like, imagine there is no heaven, no hell, and you don't go anywhere. It just becomes nothing. What do you imagine? Black? Darkness? That's not right. That's your only possible conception of nothing is darkness. There will be nothing black. There will be nothing dark. There will be nothing. You have no real way of conceiving of the absence of something. Darkness is merely the absence of light, which is what you're... it's literally going to be more nothing than space if nothing were in it. Because that would still be something. That would be a place where something could be. Nothing is nothing.
It's like when you're sleeping and you don't really see black, you just kind of, your mind shuts down. I mean, you don't really see anything.
It's kind of like that. When you go to bed and you wake up, and assuming you don't dream, it's like no time passed.
And then
You just know you don't feel good about waking up. You're like, oh, like it's hard to get moving again. It's like, imagine that, but forever. Like you just go to sleep one day and don't wake up. Like there's just that last time I went to sleep. And you don't have memory to think about it anymore. It's a tough concept to even think about and like to conceive of properly. And that's what he's afraid of. And it's worse for him.
Your soul's gone and then you're just...
Yes, it's just gone.
Yes, it's gone.
And he says here, and I think he's right. This is a special way of being afraid no trick dispels. And he says here, and of course, remember, he's an atheist when he says this. Religion used to try, that vast moth-eaten musical brocade, created to pretend we never die, and specious stuff that says no rational being can fear a thing it will not feel, not seeing that this is itself what we fear, no sight, no sound, no touch or taste or smell, nothing to think with, nothing to love or link with. The anesthetic from which none come round. Imagine, I've always thought that sounds terrible. Like, you know, like surgeries, people go into surgery sometimes. Sometimes they have a bad reaction to the anesthesia and they die. That does happen sometimes. People, like, they didn't realize that the person was, like, allergic or, like, there was something that they've never had anesthesia before, that particular type, and so they die from the anesthesia instead of what they need to get surgery from. A lot of people will say, like, oh, you only have a blah, blah, blah chance of coming out of it if you get the surgery. I'll get the surgery, and then they die. So the very last thing they remember was going to bed to getting surgery and now nothing. It's horrifying. And he says here, and this is his personal opinion, that religion was created because people couldn't handle properly the fear of death. So they're like, well, they made religion so that, oh, there's a heaven after. So now I go there. So people aren't terrified of death all the time, is what he thinks. And he says, even if somebody says no rational being can fear a thing it will not feel, well, that's silly. That itself is what you're afraid of, is not feeling. I mean, think about right now, like you don't feel anything on your skin. I mean, that's not what he's talking about. You don't feel anything on your skin, but literally there's no skin. There's nothing to feel with. It's horrifying. And he says, so death itself, it just stays on the edge of vision. A small, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. And so it stays just on the edge of vision, a small, unfocused blur, a standing chill that slows each impulse down to indecision. And this is very creepy what he says about death here. Most things may never happen. This one will. Like that's what you can say about death. Most things will never happen. This one will. You will die. It's coming eventually. There's nothing you can do about it. And realization of it rages out in furnace fear when we are caught without people or drink. I guess he's saying like when you're around others, you can kind of pretend it's not happening. When you're drinking, you can be dumb enough to think it's not happening. I'm going to live forever. Woo! But other than that, it's coming. And you think about it, especially since he's getting close to what he feels is death. Courage is no good. It means not scaring others. This is horrifying too. Being brave lets no one off the grave. Yikes. Like, I'll be brave. I can handle it. I mean, it's still going to die, though. Like, be brave all you want. Like, it's good luck. Like, I mean, what does it matter if you go out like a champ or you go out crying? Both people die. Like, it's no difference. And he says here, and the death is no different whined at than withstood. You know, the brave guy withstands death. I'll take it like a man, or something like that. And somebody else is like, another guy's like crying at it, please, I don't want to die, please, please. Death is the same either way. Death is the same. One guy is just the other. It's nothingness. Here it comes. And then he talks, that's what he comes to his conclusion is about death. And then he talks about what he's going to do now. Slowly light strengthens, and the room takes shape. It stands plain as a wardrobe, what we know, have always known, know that we can't escape, yet can't accept. One side will have to go. And then he talks about the world and how it keeps moving. Meanwhile, telephones crouch, getting ready to ring in locked up offices. And all the uncaring, intricate, rented world begins to rouse. Why does it say the rented world?
Because we don't share forever.
True. I think you hit the second meaning first. Because I think he's talking about like basically the whole world is essentially in a point now where everything's rented out. Some people own, but so much of the world is just rented. Like businesses rent, people rent homes. Nobody really owns anything. We're to the point where everybody's just sort of borrowing constantly, and everybody's got credit cards and debt. But nobody really owns anything, because everybody who currently owns something 150 years from now won't. Somebody else in their family might, but they still won't own it. Everybody 150 now, the whole world will change ownership in 150 years. That's scary. And nobody really owns it. They're all just renting it for a time, and then they'll all be dead too, eventually. The sky is white as clay with no sun, because the sun is coming up, you know, as the sun does. You ever been up where the sun rises? Like the sun brightens the sky before you actually see it. The sky is white as clay with no sun. Work has to be done. Postmen like doctors go from house to house. And he says postmen like doctors. It's not saying like postmen are like doctors in what they do. It's just saying the same as, this is back in the day when doctors used to go house to house calls. They don't really do that anymore. You always have to go to them. With the exception of what, like hospice, I think is a little different. Where doctors come to your house and nurses and keep you alive. So postmen, people who deliver your mail, the exact same as doctors, who we consider to be extremely prestigious. They go from house to house. Everybody's exactly the same. We all die in the end. Isn't that fun? What a great poem for the end of the semester. Now, I did say this on one person's, I don't think I've ever said this before, but somebody said, gosh, it's just all about death, 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 death. And I said on the discussion post that, yes, we end on death, thus we all contemplate our own death in the poem in some sense. But now, everyone, you get to, after dying, rise like a phoenix from the ashes of Britlit and continue to live your lives. Maybe one day you'll die again and come back, but we've dealt with death in a horrible, depressing way, and then pretty soon you'll rise and then forget you ever did it, and right? Because this will be just a day. This will be a semester when you did something slightly unusual. Later, when somebody asks, "Oh man, I can't wait for summer," and you're like, "Why? I never had one."
Yeah.
Right? Be like, "Oh man, I hate working. Like now that we're in out of college, you got to go to work." And it's like, "What? I always went to school in summer. It's never changed." I don't remember what it's like to be 11 anymore.
What is happiness?
What is happiness? All right, so I really think that that's about all she wrote today. So next time, remember presentations. I guess just real quick, I should remind you that you're going to mention how you came with your topic. You're going to go over your thesis, main points of your argument, then 2 questions from the audience. Remember, you can prepare people for those questions, or you can hope that they ask something. Considering I don't know if the band kids are or aren't going to be here, so keep that in mind too. That a lot of people who generally do ask questions might not be here, so it might be this group right here asking all the questions.
If it's a Monday, then they should be.
Yeah, remember, I don't want questions like,
What's your favorite article?
yeah, what's your favorite article? What was your thesis? How'd you choose your topic? If it's something that should have already been covered, I'll have people answer if they hadn't already in the presentation, and then you'll have to come up with a more original question. But y'all are good. We'll see you next time.